the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Sabha Parva. Section 14, Ramsuramba Parva. Krishna said, O great king, thou art a worthy possessor of all the qualities essential for the performance of the Rajasuya sacrifice. Thou knowest everything, O Bharata. I shall, however, still tell thee something. Those persons in the world that now go by the name of Kshatriyas are inferior, in everything, to those Kshatriyas that Rama, the son of Jamdagnya, exterminated. O Lord of the earth, O bull of the Bharata race, thou knowest what form of rule these Kshatriyas, guided by the instructions traditionally handed down from generation to generation, have established amongst their own order, and how far they are competent to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. The numerous royal lines and other ordinary Kshatriyas all represent themselves to be the descendants of Ela and Ikshvaku. The descendants of Ela, O king, as indeed, the kings of Ikshvaku's race are, know O bull of the Bharata race, each divided into 100 separate dynasties. The descendants of Yayati and the Bhojas are great, both in extent, number, and accomplishments, O king. These last are today scattered all over the earth. And all the Kshatriyas worship the prosperity of those monarchs. At present, however, O monarch, King Jasantha, overcoming that prosperity enjoyed by their whole order, and overpowering them by his energy, hath set himself over the heads of all these kings. And Jasantha, enjoying the sovereignty over the middle portion of the earth, Mathura, resolved to create a disunion amongst ourselves. O monarch, the king who is the Lord paramount of all kings, and in whom alone the dominion of the universe is centered, properly deserves to be called an emperor. And, O monarch, King Sisupala, endued with great energy, hath placed himself under his protection and hath become the generalissimo of his forces. And, O great king, the mighty Vaka, the king of the Karushas, capable of fighting by putting forth his powers of illusion, waited upon Jasantha, as his disciple. There are two others, Hasa and Dimvaka, of great energy and great soul, who have sought the shelter of the mighty Jasantha. There are others also, viz., Dantavkara, Karusha, Karava, Megvahna, that wait upon Jasantha. He also that beareth on his head that gem which is known as the most wonderful on earth, that king of the Yavnas, who hath chastised Muru and Naka, whose power is unlimited, and who ruleth the west like another Varuna, who is called Bagdatta, and who is the old friend of thy father, hath bowed his head before Jasantha, by speech and specially by act. In his heart, however, tied as he is by affection to thee, he regardeth thee as a father regardeth his child. O king, that lord of the earth who hath his dominions on the west and the south, who is thy maternal uncle and who is called Purujit, that brave perpetuator of the Kunti race, that slayer of all foes, is the single king that regardeth thee from affection. He whom I did not formerly slay, that wicked wretch amongst the Chedis, who represented himself in this world as a divine personage and who hath become known also as such, and who always beareth, from foolishness, the signs that distinguish me, that king of Vangapundara and the Kiretas, endowed with great strength, and who is known on earth by the names of Poundraka and Vasudeva, hath also espoused the side of Jasantha. And, O king of kings, Bhishmaka, the mighty king of the Bhojas, the friend of Indra, the slayer of hostile heroes, who governs a fourth part of the world, who by his learning conquered the Pandyas and the Krathakoishikas, whose brother the brave Akriti was like Rama, the son of Jamdagni, hath become a servitor to the king of Magad. We are his relatives and are therefore engaged every day in doing what is agreeable unto him. But although we regard him much, still he regardeth us not and is engaged in doing us ill. And, O king, without knowing his own strength and the dignity of the race to which he belongeth, he hath placed himself under Jasantha's shelter at sight of the latter's blazing fame alone. And, O exalted one, the 18 tribes of the Bhojas, from fear of Jasantha, have all fled towards the west, so also have the Suresanas, the Bhadrakas, the Vodas, the Salvas, the Pakcharas, the Sastalas, the Mukuptas, and the Kulindas, along with the Kuntis. And the kings of the Salvayana tribe with their brethren and followers, and the southern Panchalas and the eastern Kosala have all fled to the country of the Kuntis. So also the Matsyas and the Sanyastapdas, overcome with fear, leaving their dominions in the north, have fled into the southern country. And so all the Panchalas, alarmed at the power of Jasantha, have left their own kingdom and fled in all directions. Some time before, the foolish Kansa, having persecuted the Yadvas, married 2 of the daughters of Jasantha. They are called Asti and Prapti and are the sister of Sahdeva. Strengthened by such an alliance, the fool persecuting his relatives gained an ascendancy over them all. But by this conduct he earned great obloquy. The wretch also began to oppress the old kings of the Bhoja tribe, but they, to protect themselves from the persecution of their relative, sought our help. Having bestowed upon Akrura the handsome daughter of Ahuka, with Sankashana as my second, I did a service to my relatives, for both Kansa and Sunaman were slain by me assisted by Rama. But after the immediate cause of fear was removed by the death of Kansa, Jasantha, his father-in-law, took up arms. Ourselves consisting of the 18 younger branches of the Yadvas arrived at the conclusion that even if we struck our enemies continually with excellent weapons capable of taking the lives of the foes, we should still be unable to do anything unto him even in 300 years. He hath 2 friends that are like unto the immortals, and in point of strength the foremost of all men endued with might. They are called Hasa and Dimvaka, who are both incapable of being slain by weapons. The mighty Jasantha, being united with them, becomes incapable, I think, of being vanquished by even the 3 worlds. O thou foremost of all intelligent men, this is not our opinion alone, but all other kings also are of the same mind. There lived, O monarch, a king of the name of Hasa, who was slain by Rama, Valadeva, after a battle of 18 days. But, O Bharata, hearing people say that Hasa had been killed, Dimvaka, O king, thought that he could not live without Hasa. He accordingly jumped into the waters of the Yamuna and killed himself. Afterwards, when Hasa, the subjugator of hostile heroes, heard that Dimvaka had killed himself, he went to the Yamuna and jumped into its waters. Then, O bull of the Bharata race, King Jasantha, hearing that both Hasa and Dimvaka had been killed, returned to his kingdom with an empty heart. After Jasantha had returned, O slayer of all foes, we were filled with pleasure, and continued to live at Mathura. Then the widow of Hasa and the dogator of Jasrandha, that handsome woman with eyes like lotus petals, grieved at the death of her lord, went unto her father, and repeatedly urged, O monarch, the king of Magad, saying, O slayer of all foes, kill thou the slayer of my husband. Then, O great king, remembering the conclusion to which we had come of old, we became exceedingly cheerless and fled from Mathura. Dividing our large wealth into small portions so as to make each portion easily portable, we fled from fear of Jasandha, with our cousins and relatives. Reflecting upon everything, we fled towards the west. There is a delightful town towards the west called Kusatali, adorned by the mountains of Ravta. In that city, O monarch, we took up our abode. We rebuilt its fort and made it so strong that it has become impregnable even to the gods, and from within it even the women might fight the foe, what to speak of the Yadva heroes without fear of any kind. O slayer of all foes, we are now living in that city. And, O tiger of the Kuru race, considering the inaccessibility of that first of mountains and regarding themselves as having already crossed the fear of Jasandha, the descendants of Madhu have become exceedingly glad. Thus, O king, though possessed of strength and energy, yet from the oppressions of Jasandha we have been obliged to repair to the mountains of Gomanta, measuring 3 yojanas in length. Within each yojana have been established 120 posts of armed men. And at intervals of each yojana are 100 gates with arches which are defended by valorous heroes engaged in guarding them. And innumerable Kshatriyas invincible in war, belonging to the 18 younger branches of the Yadvas, are employed in defending these works. In our race, O king, there are full 18,000 brothers and cousins. Ahukahath had 100 sons, each of whom is almost like a god in prowess, Charudeshna with his brother Chakradeva, Satyaki, myself, Valadeva the son of Rohini, and my son someone who is equal unto me in battle. These 7, O king, are Atirathas. Besides these, there are others, O king, whom I shall presently name. They are Kritavarman, Andarishti, Samika, Samitimjaya, Kanka, Sanku and Kunti. These 7 are Maharathas. There are also 2 sons of Andakboja, and the old king himself. Endued with great energy, these are all heroes, each mighty as the thunderbolt. These Maharathas, choosing the middle country, are now living amongst the Vrishnis. O thou best of the Bharata line, thou alone art worthy of being an emperor. It behoved thee, O Bharata, to establish thy empire over all the Kshatriyas. But this is my judgment, O king, that thou wilt not be able to celebrate the Rajasuya sacrifice as long as the mighty Jasandha liveth. By him have been immured in his hill fort numerous monarchs, like a lion that hath deposited the slain bodies of mighty elephants within a cave of the king of mountains. O slayer of all enemies, King Jasandha, desirous of offering in sacrifice 100 monarchs, adored for his fierce ascetic penances the illustrious god of gods, the lord of Uma. It is by this means that the kings of the earth have been vanquished by Jasandha. And, O best of monarchs, he hath by that means been able to fulfill the vow he had made relative to his sacrifice. By defeating the kings with their troops and bringing all of them as captives into this city, he had swelled its crowds enormously. We also, O king, from fear of Jasandha, at one time had to leave Mathura and fly to the city of Dwaravati. If, O great king, thou desirest to perform this sacrifice, strive to release the kings confined by Jasandha, as also to compass his death. O son of the Kuru race, otherwise this undertaking of thine can never be completed. O thou foremost of intelligent men, if the Rajasuya is to be performed by thee, you must do this in this way and not otherwise. This, O king, is my view on the matter. Do, O sinless one, as thou thinkest. Under these circumstances, O king, having reflected upon everything, taking note of causes, tell us what thou thyself thinkest proper. Thus ended the 14th section in the Rajsuramba Parva of the Sabha Parva. Section 15, Rajsuramba Parva continued. Yudhishthira said, intelligent as thou art, thou hast said what none else is capable of saying. There is none else on earth who is settler of all doubts. Behold, there are kings in every province employed in benefiting their respective selves. But no one amongst them hath been able to achieve the imperial dignity. Indeed, the title emperor is difficult of acquisition. He that knoweth the valor and strength of others never applaudeth himself. He, indeed, is really worthy of applause, worship, who, engaged in encounters with his enemies, beareth himself commendably. O thou supporter of the dignity of the Vrishni race, man's desires and propensities, like the wide earth itself adorned with many jewels, are varied and extensive. As experience can seldom be gained but by traveling in regions remote from one's home, so salvation can never be attained except by acting according to principles that are very high, compared with the ordinary level of our desire and propensities. I regard peace of mind as the highest object here, for from that quality may proceed my prosperity. In my judgment, if I undertake to celebrate this sacrifice, I shall never win the highest reward. O Janardana, endued with energy and intelligence, these that have been born in our race think that someone amongst them will at one time become the foremost amongst all Kshatriyas. But, O exalted one, we also were all frightened by the fear of Jasandha and, O sinless one, by the wickedness of that monarch. O thou invincible in battle, the might of thy arm is my refuge. When therefore, thou taken fright at Jasandha's might, how should I regard myself strong in comparison with him? Madhava. O thou of the Vrishni race, I am repeatedly depressed by the thought whether Jasandha is capable or not of being slain by thee, by Rama, by Bhimsena, or by Arjuna. But what shall I say, O Keshava? Thou art my highest authority on everything. On hearing these words, Bhima, well skilled in speech, said, that king who is without exertion, or who being weak and without resources entereth into hostility with one that is strong, perisheth like an anthill. It may be generally seen, however, that even a king that is weak may vanquish an enemy that is strong and obtain the fruition of all his wishes, by wakefulness and by the application of policy. In Krishna is policy, in myself strength, in Arjuna triumphs. So like the three sacrificial fires that accomplish a sacrifice, we shall accomplish the death of the king of Magad. Krishna then said, one that is immature in understanding seeketh the fruition of his desire without an eye to what may happen to him in future. It is seen that no one forgiveth for that reason a foe that is of immature understanding and inclined to serve his own interests. It hath been heard by us that in the Krita age, having brought everyone under their subjection, Yavnasvin by the abolition of all taxes, Bhagiratha by his kind treatment to his subjects, Kartavirya by the energy of his asceticism, the Lord Bharata by his strength and valor, and Mangruta by his prosperity, all these five became emperors. But, O Yudhishthira, thou who covetest the imperial dignity deservest it, not by one but, by all these qualities, viz., victory, protection afforded to thy people, virtue, prosperity, and policy. Know, O bull of the Kuru race, that Jasandha, the son of Vrihadratha is even such, i.e., a candidate for the imperial dignity. 100 dynasties of kings have become unable to oppose Jasandha. He, therefore, may be regarded to be an emperor for his strength. Kings that are wearers of jewels worship Jasandha, with presents of jewels. But, wicked from his childhood, he is scarcely satisfied with such worship. Having become the foremost among all, he attacketh yet with violence kings with crowns on their heads. Nor is there seen any king from whom he taketh not tribute. Thus hath he brought under his sway nearly 100 kings. How can, O son of Pritha, any weak monarch approach him with hostile intentions? Confined in the temple of Shiva and offered as sacrifice unto him like so many animals, do not these monarchs dedicated unto that god feel the most poignant misery, O hull of the Bharata race? A Kshatriya that dieth in battle is ever regarded with respect. Why shall we not, therefore, meet together and oppose Jasandha in battle? He hath already brought 86 kings, 14 only are wanting to complete 100. As soon as he obtaineth those 14, he will begin his cruel act. He that shall be able to obstruct that act will surely win blazing renown. And he that will vanquish Jasandha will surely become the emperor of all the Kshatriyas. Thus endeth the 15th section in the Rajsuramba Parva of the Sabha Parva. Section 16, Rajsuramba Parva continued. Yudhishthira said, desirous of the imperial dignity but acting from selfish motives and relying upon courage alone, how, O Krishna, can I dispatch ye unto Jasandha? Both Bhima and Arjuna, I regard as my eyes, and thee, O Janardana, as my mind. How shall I live, deprived of my eyes and mind? Yam himself cannot vanquish in battle the mighty host of Jasandha that is endued, besides with terrible valor. What valor can ye exhibit against it? This affair that promises to terminate otherwise may lead to great mischief. It is my opinion, therefore, that the proposed task should not be undertaken. Listen, O Krishna, to what I for one think. O Janardana, desisting from this act seemeth to me to be beneficial. My heart today is afflicted. The Rajsuya appeareth to me difficult of accomplishment. Vasampayana said, Arjuna, who had obtained that excellent of bows and that couple of inexhaustible quivers, and that car with that banner, as also that assembly room, now addressed Yudhishthira and said, I have obtained, O king, a bow and weapons and arrows and energy and allies and dominions and fame and strength. Those are always difficult of acquisition, however much they may be desired. Learned men of repute always praise in good society nobleness of descent. But nothing is equal to might. Indeed, O monarch, there is nothing I like more than prowess. Born in a race noted for its valor, one that is without valor is scarcely worthy of regard. One, however, possessed of valor, that is born in a race not noted for it is much superior to the former. He, O king, is a Kshatriya in everything who increaseth his fame and possessions by the subjugation of his enemies. And he that is possessed of valor, though destitute of all other merits, will vanquish his foes. One, however, that is destitute of valor, though possessed of every other merit, can scarcely accomplish anything. Every merit exists by the side of valor in an incipient state. Concentration of attention, exertion and destiny exist as the three causes of victory. One, however, that is possessed of valor doth not yet deserve success if he acts carelessly. It is for this that an enemy endued with strength sometimes suffers death at the hands of his foes. As meanness overtakes the weak, so folly sometimes overtakes the strong. A king, therefore, that is desirous of victory, should avoid both these causes of destruction. If for the purpose of our sacrifice, we endeavor to slay Jasanta and rescue the kings kept by him for a cruel purpose, there is no higher act which we could employ ourselves in. If, however, we do not undertake the task, the world will always think us incompetent. We have certainly the competence, O king. Why should you, therefore, regard us as incompetent? Those that have become munis desirous of achieving tranquility of souls, obtain yellow robes with ease. So if we vanquish the foe, the imperial dignity will easily be ours. We shall, therefore, fight the foe. Thus ended the 16th section in the Rajsuramba Parva of the Sabha Parva. Section 17, Rajsuramba Parva continued. Vasudeva said, Arjuna hath indicated what the inclination should be of one that is born in the Bharata race, especially of one who is the son of Kunti. We know not when death will overtake us, in the night or in the day. Nor have we ever heard that immortality hath been achieved by desisting from fight. This, therefore, is the duty of men, viz., to attack all enemies in accordance with the principles laid down in the ordinance. This always gives satisfaction to the heart. Aided by good policy, if not frustrated by destiny, an undertaking becomes crowned with success. If both parties aided by such means encounter each other, one must obtain ascendancy over the other, for both cannot win or lose. A battle, however, if directed by bad policy, which again is destitute of the well-known arts, ends in defeat or destruction. If again, both parties are equally circumstanced, the result becomes doubtful. Both, however, cannot win. When such is the case, why should we not, aided by good policy, directly approach the foe, and destroy him, like the current of the river uprooting a tree? If, disguising our own faults, we attack the enemy taking advantage of his loopholes, why should we not succeed? Indeed, the policy of intelligent men is that one should not fight openly with foes that are exceedingly powerful and are at the head of their well-arrayed forces. This too is my opinion. If, however, we accomplish our purpose secretly entering the abode of our foe and attacking his person, we shall never earn obloquy. That bull among men, Jasanta alone, enjoyeth unfaded glory like unto him who is the self in the heart of every created being. But I see his destruction before me. Desirous of protecting our relatives, we will either slay him in battle or shall ascend to heaven, being ourselves slain in the end by him. Yudhishthira said, O Krishna, who is this Jasanta? What is his energy and what is his prowess, that having touched thee, he hath not been burned like an insect at the touch of fire? Krishna said, Hear, O monarch, who Jasanta is, what his energy, and what is his prowess, and why also he hath been spared by us, even though he hath repeatedly offended us. There was a mighty king of the name of Vrihadratha, the lord of the Magadhas. Proud in battle, he had 3 Akshohinis of troops. Handsome and endued with energy, possessed of affluence and prowess beyond measure, and always bearing on his person marks indicating installation at sacrifices. He was like a second Indra. In glory he was like unto Surya, in forgiveness like unto the earth, in wrath like unto the destroyer Yam, and in wealth like unto wise Ravana. And O thou foremost of the Bharata race, the whole earth was covered by his qualities that descended upon him from a long line of ancestors, like the rays emerging from the sun. And, O bull of the Bharata race, endued with great energy, that monarch married 2 twin daughters of the king of Kashi, both endued with the wealth of beauty. And that bull among men made an engagement in secret with his wives that he would love them equally and would never show a preference for either. And the Lord of the earth in the company for his two dearly loved wives, both of whom suited him well, passed his days in joy, like a mighty elephant in the company of two cow elephants, or like the ocean in his personified form between Ganga and Yamuna, also in their personified forms. The monarch's youth, however, passed away in the enjoyment of his possessions, without any son being born unto him to perpetuate his line. The best of monarchs failed to obtain a son to perpetuate his race, even by means of various auspicious rites and homas, and sacrifices performed with the desire for having an offspring. One day the king heard that the high-souled Chandakoishika, the son of Kakshivat of the illustrious Gautama race, having desisted from ascetic penances, had come in course of his wanderings to his capital and had taken his seat under the shade of a mango tree. The king went unto that Muni accompanied by his two wives, and worshipping him with jewels and valuable presents gratified him highly. That best of rishis, truthful in speech and firmly attached to truth, then told the king, O king of kings, I have been pleased with thee. O thou of excellent voice, solicit thou a boon. King Vrihadratha then, with his wives, bending low unto that rishi, spoke these words, choked with tears in consequence of his despair of obtaining a child. O Holy One, forsaking my kingdom, I am about to go into the woods to practice ascetic penances. I am very unfortunate, for I have no son. What shall I do, therefore, with my kingdom or with a boon? Krishna continued, hearing these words of the king, the Muni controlling his outer senses entered into meditation, sitting in the shade of that very mango tree where he was. And there fell upon the lap of the seated Muni a mango that was juicy and untouched by the beak of a parrot or any other bird. That best of Munis, taking up the fruit and mentally pronouncing certain mantras over it, gave it unto the king as the means of his obtaining an incomparable offspring. And the great Muni, possessed also of extraordinary wisdom, addressing the monarch, said, Return, O king, thy wish is fulfilled. Desist, O king, from going into the woods. Hearing these words of the Muni and worshipping his feet, the monarch possessed of great wisdom, returned to his own abode. And recollecting his former promise unto them, the king gave, O bull of the Bharata race, unto his two wives that one fruit. His beautiful queens, dividing that single fruit into two parts, ate it up. In consequence of the certainty of the realization of the Muni's words and his truthfulness, both of them conceived, as an effect of their having eaten that fruit. And the king, beholding them in that state, became filled with great joy. Then, O wise monarch, some time after, when the time came, each of the queens brought forth a fragmentary body. And each fragment had one eye, one arm, one leg, half a stomach, half a face, and half an anus. Beholding the fragmentary bodies, both the mothers trembled much. The helpless sisters then anxiously consulted each other, and sorrowfully abandoned those fragments endued with life. The two midwives that waited upon the queens then carefully wrapping up the stillborn fragments, went out of the inner apartments of the palace by the back door and throwing away the bodies, returned in haste. A little while after, O tiger among men, a Rakshasa woman of the name of Jara, living upon flesh and blood, took up the fragments that lay on a crossing. And impelled by force of fate, the female cannibal united the fragments for facility of carrying them away. And, O bull among men, As soon as the fragments were united, they formed a sturdy child of one body endued with life. Then, O king, the female cannibal, with eyes expanded in wonder, found herself unable to carry away that child having a body as hard and strong as the thunderbolt. That infant then closing his fists, red as copper, and inserting them into its mouth, began to roar terribly as rain-charged clouds. Alarmed at the sound, the inmates of the palace, O tiger among men, suddenly came out with the king, O slayer of all foes. The helpless and disappointed and sad queens also, with breasts full of milk, also came out suddenly to recover their child. The female cannibal, beholding the queens in that condition and the king too so desirous of an offspring, and the child was possessed of such strength thought within herself, I live within dominions of the king who is so desirous of an offspring. It behoveth not me, therefore, to kill the infant child of such an illustrious and virtuous monarch. The Rakshasa woman then, holding the child in her arms like the clouds enveloping the sun and assuming a human form, told the king these words. O Vrihadratha, this is thy child, given to thee by me, take it. It hath been born of both thy wives by virtue of the command of the great Brahmana. Cast away by the midwives, it hath been protected by me. Krishna continued, O thou foremost of the Bharata race, the handsome daughters of the king of Kashi, having obtained the child, soon drenched it with their lacteal streams. The king ascertaining everything, was filled with joy, and addressing that female cannibal disguised as a human being possessing the complexion of gold, asked, O thou of the complexion of the filament of the lotus, who art thou that givest me this child? O auspicious one, thou seemest to me as a goddess roaming at thy pleasure. Thus endeth the 17th section in the Rajsuramba Parva of the Sabha Parva. Section 18, Rajsuramba Parva continued. Krishna continued, hearing these words of the king, the Rakshasa woman answered, Blessed be thou, O King of Kings. Capable of assuming any form at will, I am a Rakshasa woman called Jara. I am living, O King, happily in thy house, worshipped by all. Every day I wander from house to house of men. Indeed, I was created of old by the self-create and was named Kritevi, the household goddess. Of celestial beauty I was placed in the world for the destruction of the Danvas. He that with devotion painteth on the walls of his house a likeness of myself, endued with youth and in the midst of children, must have prosperity in his abode, otherwise a household must sustain decay and destruction. O Lord, painted on the walls of thy house is a likeness of myself surrounded by numerous children. Stationed there I am daily worshipped with scents and flowers, with incense and edibles and various objects of enjoyment. Thus worshipped in thy house, I daily think of doing thee some good in return. It chanced, virtuous king, that I beheld the fragmentary bodies of thy son. When these happened to be united by me, a living child was formed of them. O great king, it hath been so owing to thy good fortune alone. I have been only the instrument. I am capable of swallowing the mountain of Meru itself. What shall I say of the child? I have, however, been gratified with thee in consequence of the worship I receive in thy house. It is, therefore, O king, that I have bestowed this child on thee. Krishna continued, having spoken these words, O king, Jara disappeared there and then. The king having obtained the child then entered the palace. And the king then caused all the rites of infancy to be performed on that child, and ordered a festival to be observed by his people in honor of that Rakshasa woman. And the monarch equal unto Brahma himself then bestowed a name on his child. And he said that because the child had been united by Jara, he should be called Jasanta, i.e., united by Jara. And the son of the king of Magad, endued with great energy, began to grow up in bulk and strength like a fire into which hath been poured libation of clarified butter, and increasing day by day like the moon in the bright fortnight, the child began to enhance the joy of his parents. Thus ends the 18th section in the Rajsuramba Parva of the Sabha Parva. Section 19, Rajsuramba Parva continued. Krishna said, sometime after this, the great ascetic, the exalted Chandakoshika, again came into the country of the Magads. Filled with joy at the advent of the Rishi, King Vrihadratha, accompanied by his ministers and priests and wives and son, went out to receive him. And, O Bharata, worshipping the Rishi with water to wash his feet and face, and with the offerings of Arghya, the king then offered his whole kingdom along with his son for the acceptance of the Rishi. The adorable Rishi, accepting that worship offered by the king, addressing the ruler of Magad, O monarch, said with well-pleased heart, O king, I knew all this by spiritual insight. But hear, O king of kings, what this son of thine will be in future, as also what his beauty, excellence, strength, and valor will be. Without doubt this son of thine, growing in prosperity and endued with prowess, will obtain all these. Like other birds that can never imitate the speed of Vinta's son, Garuda, the other monarchs of the earth will not be able to equal in energy this thy son, who will be endued with great valor. And all those that will stand in his way will certainly be destroyed. Like the force of the current that can never make the slightest impression upon the rocky breast of a mountain, weapons hurled at him even by the celestials will fail to produce the least pain in him. He will blaze forth above the heads of all that wear crowns on their brows. Like the sun that dims the luster of all luminous bodies, this son of thine will rob all monarchs of their splendor. Even kings that are powerful and own large armies and numberless vehicles and animals, upon approaching this son of thine, will all perish as insects upon fire. This child will seize the growing prosperity of all kings like the ocean receiving the rivers swollen with the water of the rainy season. Like the huge earth that bears all kinds of produce, supporting things that are both good and evil, this child endued with great strength will support all the four orders of men. And all the kings of the earth will live in obedience to the commands of this child, just as every creature endued with body live in dependence upon Vayu that is dear as self unto beings. This prince of Magad, the mightiest of all men in the world, will behold with his physical eyes the god of gods called Rudra or Hara, the slayer of Tripura. O thou slayer of all foes! Saying this, the Rishi, thinking of his own business, dismissed King Vrihadratha. The lord of the Magads then, re-entering his capital, and calling together his friends and relations, installed Jasanta on the throne. King Vrihadratha then came to feel a great distaste for worldly pleasures. And after the installation of Jasanta, King Vrihadratha, followed by his two wives, became an inmate of an ascetic asylum in the woods. And, O king, after his father and mothers had retired into the woods, Jasanta by his valor brought numerous kings under his sway. Vasampayana continued, King Vrihadratha, having lived for some time in the woods and practiced ascetic penances, ascended to heaven at last with his wives. King Jasanta, also, as uttered by Kaushika, having received those numerous boons, ruled his kingdom like a father. Some time after, when King Kansa was slain by Vasudeva, an enmity arose between him and Krishna. Then, O Bharata, the mighty king of Magadha from his city of Girivraja, whirling a make 99 times, hurled it towards Mathura. At that time Krishna of wonderful deeds was residing at Mathura. The handsome make hurled by Jasandha fell near Mathura at a distance of 99 yojanas from Girivraja. The citizens, beholding the circumstance well, went unto Krishna and informed him of the fall of the make. The place where the make fell is adjacent to Mathura and is called Gadwasan. Jasandha had two supporters called Hasa and Dimvaka, both of whom were incapable of being slain by weapons. Well conversant with the science of politics and morality, in council they were the foremost of all intelligent men. I have already told thee everything about that mighty pair. They too and Jasandha, I believe, are more than a match for 3 worlds. O brave king, it was for this reason that the powerful Kukura, Andaka and Vrishni tribes, acting from motives of policy, did not deem it proper to fight with him. Thus ends the 19th section in the Rajsuramba Parva of the Sabha Parva. Section 20, Jasandha Parva. Krishna said, both Hasa and Dimvaka have fallen, Kansa also with all his followers has been slain. The time hath, therefore come for the destruction of Jasandha. He is incapable of being vanquished in battle even by all the celestials and the asuras fighting together. We think, however, that he should be vanquished in a personal struggle with bare arms. In me is policy, in Bhima is strength and in Arjuna is triumph, and therefore, as prelude to performing the Rajasuya, we will certainly achieve the destruction of the ruler of Magadha. When we 3 approached that monarch in secret, and he will, without doubt, be engaged in an encounter with one of us. From fear of disgrace, from covetousness, and from pride of strength he will certainly summon Bhima to the encounter. Like death himself that slays a person however swollen with pride, the long-armed and mighty Bhimsena will effect the destruction of the king. If thou knowest my heart, if thou hast any faith in me, then make over to me, as a pledge, Bhima and Arjuna without loss of time. Vasampayana continued, thus addressed by the Exalted One, Yudhishthira, beholding both Bhima and Arjuna standing with cheerful faces, replied, saying, O Achyuta, thou slayer of all enemies, say not so. Thou art the Lord of the Pandavas. We are dependent on thee. What thou sayest, O Govinda, is consistent with wise counsels. Thou never leddest those upon whom prosperity hath turned her back. I who stay under thy command regard that Jasandha is already slain, that the monarchs confined by him have already been set free, that the Rajasuya hath already been accomplished by me. O Lord of the universe, O thou best of persons, watchfully act thou so that this task may be accomplished. Without ye then I dare not live, like a sorrowful man afflicted with disease, and bereft of the 3 attributes of morality, pleasure and wealth. Parth cannot live without Sorai, Krishna, nor can Sorai live without Parth. Nor is there anything in the world that is unconquerable by these 2, viz., Krishna and Arjuna. This handsome Bhima also is the foremost of all persons endued with might. Of great renown, what can he not achieve when with ye 2 troops, when properly led, always do excellent service. A force without a leader hath been called inert by the wise. Forces, therefore, should always be led by experienced commanders. Into places that are low, the wise always conduct the water. Even fishermen cause the water of tanks to run out through holes. Experienced leaders always lead their forces, noting the loopholes and assailable points of the foe. We shall, therefore, strive to accomplish our purpose following the leadership of Govinda, conversant with the science of politics, that personage whose fame hath spread all over the world. For the successful accomplishment of one's purposes, one should ever place Krishna in the van, that foremost of personages, whose strength consists in wisdom and policy, and who possesseth a knowledge of both method and means. For the accomplishment of one's purpose let, therefore, Arjuna, the son of Pritha, follow Krishna, the foremost of the Yadvas, and let Bhima follow Arjuna. Policy and good fortune and might will then bring about success in a matter requiring valor. Vasampayana said, thus addressed by Yudhishthira, the trio of Krishna, Arjuna and Bhima, all possessed of great energy, set out for Magad attired in the garb of Snedka Brahmanas of resplendent bodies, and blessed by the agreeable speeches of friends and relatives. Possessed of superior energy and of bodies already like the sun, the moon, and the fire, inflamed with wrath at the sad lot of their relative kings, those bodies of theirs became much more blazing. And the people, beholding Krishna and Arjuna, both of whom had never before been vanquished in battle, with Bhima in the van, all ready to achieve the same task, regarded Jasandha as already slain. For the illustrious pair, Krishna and Arjuna, were masters that directed every operation in the universe, as also all acts relating to the morality, wealth, and pleasure of every being. Having set out from the country of the Kurus, they passed through Kurujangala and arrived at the charming lake of lotuses. Passing over the hills of Calcutta, they then went on crossing the Gandaki, the Sadnira, Karetoya, and the Sakaravarta and the other rivers, taking their rise in the same mountains. They then crossed the delightful Sarayu and saw the country of eastern Kosla. Passing over that country they went to Mithila, and then crossing the Mala and Chamanvati, the three heroes crossed the Ganges and the Son and went on towards the east. At last those heroes of unfaded glory arrived at Magad in the heart of the country of Kushamban. Reaching then the hills of Gotha, they saw the city of Magad that was always filled with kin and wealth and water and rendered handsome with the innumerable trees standing there. Thus ends the 20th section in the Jasandha Parva of the Sabha Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.